So first, let's talk about brushes. You don't have to have nice brushes. I don't. These are the kind of brushes that I usually use. They're just the cheap ones from Michaels, the Michaels brand. For brush lettering, I usually prefer a round brush or roundish brush. I use these ones, or I'm going to use these ones today. I'm not going to use all of them at once. They are kind of, you can see, pointy at the end. These are a synthetic brush. I think they're, I guess some sort of plastic. I don't know. But you can see when I put them down on the surface that when you roll them in the paint, and then the amount of pressure you push depends on how thick the line will be. So if I took this, I turn it kind of in the paint, and then I would press lightly to get the thin line, press harder to get the thick line. Again, turn, push on the downstroke. That's kind of the technique overall. I have a bunch of different sizes. If you don't have a brush like that, the next best option would be a flat or an angled brush. These again are the synthetic brushes. They have a little bit more stiffness, but this is how you would get that brush effect. So you'd use the thin side to make the thin line, and then the thick side on the downstroke. So those would be my second choice. The third choice would be these, which are also flat and round brushes. I don't prefer these kind, which are natural bristles. They don't have as much resistance. They're not as strong, I guess would be the word, but they are a little bit more difficult to control. So if you are painting and you find that you have all kinds of little dots outside of your strokes that you don't like, try a synthetic brush. You'll get a little bit more control. You're also going to need a pencil for this, an eraser, or I guess you don't need them. You can just go for it. And then I'm using 3 colors of acrylic paint. I'm going to use blue, pink, and green. Doesn't really matter what colors you pick. You can pick however you want, but you can see that these are pretty old bottles, so make sure you shake well before you pour them out. When I use paint, I also like to pour my paint into the top of a Tupperware lid. I do it on the top side, not the bottom side that you would put onto food. But then if I don't finish in time, I can cover the top with saran wrap, and there's not a lot of air in there, so it won't dry out. The other thing you'll need is scissors and a cereal box. That's just what I'm using. Use whatever is lying around. You can use thick paper, you can use cardstock, you can use chipboard, you can use the inside of an Amazon box. This is just what I had, so this is what I'm using. But I did kind of like the brown background for this piece, so I just thought it looked nice. If you wanted to use white paper, you could also use different colors. It's more of just a demonstration. I would love to see what you guys do with this. So I'm just cutting off the front face of the cereal box here. No product placement. This is just the cereal I eat, sorry. I'm going to flip it over because that's the side I actually care about. And I'm going to try and square it off with the scissors, but I'm not usually very good at eyeballing that. That's not a very straight line at all. Oh golly. This line, this is not. Mostly it's important. I don't like to have any of the bends in there from where it was like around the corner. This isn't square. This is a rhombus. This is a parallelogram. If you have one of those radial arm cutter kind of things for paper, if you're like a preschool teacher or something, then I would go use that to square it off, because I can't cut a straight line. It's not happening. Oh, it's not gonna happen. And it's close. I'm gonna just go use the cutter. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I used my cutter. This is a square piece. And we're good to go. So now the next part that you're gonna do, I just eyeball the kind of the dead center and put a little plus mark there so that I know where the middle of my canvas is. And then I like to usually spread out the letters of the phrase that I'm gonna write pretty evenly, as artistically as I like. So the phrase I'm going to spell this time is, I'm going to write springtime flowers, and we're going to do it in brush lettering. This is a mistake. I'm going to shake my paint. Very good. But you really ought to do the pencil first and then pour the paint, especially if you're using acrylic like I am. It dries out pretty fast. You don't need that much. But so in order to get kind of an even distribution of letters across the thing, I usually try and count the letters in the words I'm going to spell. So let's see. Springtime. Alright, so that's even. And then, so I'm going to do spring and then time. And then I'm going to try and count flowers. Flowers. I don't know why I put an extra finger up, but there it is. It's only 7 letters, so W would be right in the middle. And I'm going to kind of do an arc so that I can make some art underneath it. So I'm going to start with drawing the S, nice and big. P, and again, I'm just doing the pencil, and I'm going to get a little bit free and loose with where the ascendants and descendants on all my letters go, because I want it to look like I just whipped it out with a brush, even though obviously it takes a little bit more work than that, and we're going to work on it very carefully. I do leave a little bit of space in between each letter, and I'm doing it kind of at an arc, but it's still above that center line. And then I kind of aim my first 3 letters so that the W ends up over that plus, and then just continue around so it looks even on the other side. So I've kind of done one small arc to the bottom bigger arc, and then I added the flourish for the T with the pencil. But again, it's just pencil, so you can do anything with the brush. The paint over it is really what's going to be what matters. I'm using the number 2 here, which is smaller. The bigger brush you use, the more contrast you can get between the thin and the thick. And I'm just going to, when I dip my paintbrush, I just roll it a little bit to sort of sharpen the point, sort of. Paint doesn't really work like that. It's going to flow down your brush to thicken out. But this is how we are going to start. So you're just going to follow along like you would with a pen, and on the upstrokes, just try and use the tip. Don't push very hard. And then when we get to the downstrokes, sometimes you have to get a little more paint, and then you fan the brush out a little bit more. So we can see here, there we go, I got more paint, and push, and that's what makes that nice thick line. As you go around, it'll kind of naturally thin out as you go down. I sometimes will take a little bit more paint and smooth out my lines, and then go back up around for the upstroke. You'll notice now this is the second time I've done it, and I'm going to do it for the rest of it. This is why you practice the alphabet with the pencil and your pen, so that you know which lines are the upstroke and the downstroke. I almost always paint the upstrokes going down. That's because of an old drawing thing that I learned, that you should push, you should push the straights and pull the curves. I have a naturally shaky hand, and if you do too, that's a really good tip. If you feel like your lines aren't straight, or they're like have weird wiggles, which mine always do whenever I try and push the curve, I do better pulling the curve. So even if it is the upstroke, I will still pull it as a downstroke, because that keeps my hand a little steadier. But I'm trying to stick to it for the sake of instruction. So when we're going up, I thin out the brush, and when I go down, I make it thick again. And the thing about doing it with paint too is you can see I'm reapplying a lot more than I maybe would with obviously you're not going to reapply pencil, but sometimes with the paint you do want to go back over some of the lines, and so you just have to pay attention to what the line is supposed to be. If it's supposed to be thick or thin, just make sure you're keeping it that way if you want to even out the paint. Acrylic paint also will dry kind of darker than the color that it is when it's wet, and you'll see that as it goes on, that the this G, I was not going to make it up. I have to go down. That's going to give you the nicer line if you want to cheat a little bit and go down instead, but just don't push. Keep it nice and light, and then just even it out as much as possible. Brush lettering with an actual brush is obviously a lot more difficult than using just a pencil and cheating, but I do really like the look that you can get with the paint, and of course there's a million different kinds of paint, and the watercolor, you can get even more cool blending stuff, so I think it's worth it, but definitely, not after you just had a cup of coffee and your hands are shaking, or make sure you get a full night's sleep or whatever. So I'm going to keep going here. You can see the T, how I tapered. The natural stroke as you go around that curve will thin out. Push down on that I, not very evenly. You can notice here with the brushes, the way I don't do when I'm doing markers or pens. I usually leave the dots or the crossing of the T's and stuff until the very end. But with paint, you kind of do want to make sure that you do them as you go. Mostly because if you wait until the end, some of the letters will be wet still, and you will go ahead and dip your hand in the paint, or you could accidentally mess up some of your letters, and that's not great because you worked really hard on it. So I usually do those as I go when I'm painting. Alright, so M's. M's are kind of tricky sometimes. I will usually make the middle, this one, a little bit shorter, and then make that second one a little bit longer. I didn't make this one very long, but usually I will take that dip pretty low and emphasize the contrast between the short middle and the long end of the second one. Regular old E. And just fixing some of the paint distribution. Okay, so that's the top one finished. I'm going to add a little flourish to the S. I wasn't sure if I wanted it, but I do. So that's a downstroke. So I will thicken that part out. And yay! I love ribbons. It just looks like ribbons. Okay, so I'm actually going to add a little flourish to the F2. So down, then, and up. Okay, and again, that's actually an upstroke if you were writing it with pencil, but I just can't make that curve with my hand go straight if I'm actually going up, so I go down instead to make it a little bit smoother. And then I'm just making sure that I really push on the downstroke so that side is a lot thinner. If your upstrokes end up looking a little thick because you have to stroke down actually to paint them, then just make sure you make your actual downstrokes a lot thicker. The more important thing is the contrast, that the thick parts look a lot thicker than the thin parts. So you can always correct any mistakes that you make. Or my Bob Ross vibes, they're just happy accidents. So I'm going to make that a little bit thicker. And sometimes you run out of paint halfway through, so it's always better to just like start a little bit ahead of where you were and try and smooth it out. Kind of blend it in. O's. These O's are my bane. But I do end up on that downstroke in the middle loop. I will do it on this one, but I'll swoop it down a little bit more. Yeah! Alright. Up to the W. The W, I try and kind of do the reverse thing of the M. I make the front one a little bit short, and then I'll make the second one a little bit long. I guess it's not the reverse, it's just upside down. And then don't forget that the last one of the W is actually a upstroke. So I always make that one too thick, so that's why I thickened the other two lines instead. actually really excited that I got to do this as a video program. I don't think it would work as well in the hangar where you guys would all be trying to see what I was doing. So I hope that you have made it through this video so far, and I'm really glad that I get to show people how to do this. So my R, thickening out that downstroke, and then just cleaning up that line. That one went really well, nice and sharp. And then we move on to the S. S is my favorite letter to do. Maybe I am biased because my name starts with S, but I just think it's, especially this way, which is a very trendy way to make it, I just really love the cursive S. It looks the most like a ribbon. It's very loopy. If you make a mistake, it's really easy to correct it. I just really like the letter S. I sound like I'm on Sesame Street. Here I am. Alright, and then we just finish up with that flourish. And usually if the flourish, even if the flourish is technically an upstroke, I will usually make the end of it a little bit longer. There, I made it a downstroke, but just because I think it looks weird to end on a thin, I like to end on the thick one. Okay, so that's the end of the actual letters. So the next part would be, if you want, you can stop here. But I did leave the area under flowers because I wanted to do some actual flowers on this piece. So a little bonus lesson, past brush lettering, is going to be, let's paint some flowers. Alright, so you are just going to take your leftover blue paint, which I mean, you can see, you don't use all the blue paint. Make sure to give it a good shake. I'm going to take this pink and put some on there, and I'm going to put a little bit of green. Again, if you're not really sure where you want to paint, I would wait, do one color at a time, don't pour a lot, because that acrylic paint especially dries so fast. It is just a waste of paint. I poured out all 3 of my colors because I had a good idea of what I wanted my design to be, but in general, not a great idea. So the first thing I'm going to do is fill that area under the word flowers. I want a nice little spray there. So I'm just going to take pink and do 3 round shapes together. If you start on the edge of the petal with the round end of the brush and pull towards the middle, you'll get a nice round. If you start to the middle and pull towards the outside, you will get a kind of a jaggedy sort of thing. So I did 3 big ones and 3 little ones to make a pansy. I'm doing 5 rounds here just to make a kind of generic flower. This is pulling from the center and out. It's going to make kind of a cherry blossom thing, which I really like because I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing. And it's also why I'm doing pansies. But those are just 2 simple techniques. So if you start from the edge and go in, you get a round. If you start from the middle and go out, you get kind of a sharper, the bristles will flare out. I'm going to do another one over here. I was trying to figure out how to not get paint all over my arm, but it just be like that. I'm going to put a couple more. I just want to fill it out, do a couple different things. And then if you try to make something smooth and it turns out it's not smooth, you can always just take more paint and smooth it out. But do try and use the outside edge of the brush, not the inside. You'll always have more control at the brush tip than later. Okay, so what I'm doing here is actually mixing my leftover blue paint with some pink paint so that I can make some nice purple paint. I thought it would be another good accent color. I'm going to do another pansy at the top here. 3 smooth and then go towards the middle, and then I do 3 littler ones on the bottom. Alright, and then I'm going to do some small ones. More like a hibiscus. No, a cherry blossom is what I meant. Hibiscus is the Hawaiian one. And then a little tiny one just to fill it out. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to draw flowers where I draw flowers. I just am filling it in. I'm going to do a couple more up here. I really do like the cherry blossoms. Kind of the more chaotic looking flowers, I guess. And a little bit more paint. I'm going to do another pansy, I think, because it's a bigger area. I kind of just wanted to look like somebody sprinkled flowers all over my sign. And again, kind of smoothing, starting from the outside and going in instead. You can always turn your paper. I always forget, but I am filming, so I'm trying to keep it straight. But you can always move your paper and work from it upside down, work from it from another side, so that you don't have to do so many weird things with your hands to try and get the right angle on your brush. Put another pink one in there. So I'm going to show you how to do one more flower. I'm taking the purple, and I'm actually going to draw a lavender because it's my favorite. So you just kind of pull towards the center and alternate sides, kind of like a braid almost, but just do like little teardroppy shapes towards the center. I don't think that lavender grows in the spring, but I didn't think of it then when I was doing it, and it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite flowers, so I'm just doing it anyways. If you don't want to draw lavender on yours, you don't have to. You can look it up and find out what flowers bloom in the spring, and you can do those instead. But I like lavender, so I'm drawing lavender. That's my Bob Ross vibe, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple more purple because there's not a lot purple on this side. I really do like the lavender. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think lavender is a fall flower. Oh, that's embarrassing. Well, that's okay. They're really pretty, though. I'm doing these two over by the F. I'm going to just... think that's it on all the flowers. So now I'm going to take some green, and I'm actually using a big brush because I get a little bit more control towards the tip for me. I'm going to add some leaves. I'm going to add some stems. And you can honestly add as much or as little as you want. If you don't like the lines I draw, you don't have to draw them. If you think you want more leaves. So I've seen a lot of actually really pretty typography with more like leaves than flowers, where they're all leaves. If you want to do cactuses, you can. I don't really know if they're springtime, but they're nice. So I'm just going to add a little vine here in the middle of our spray. Kind of fill it out. Doesn't make any sense if that a pansy would grow on a vine, let alone with these other kind of flowers, but it just looks nice. There doesn't have to be rules. Okay, and I'm going to connect each flower. I'm using that same technique, by the way, on this round brush to make these thin lines, even though it's a thicker brush. That we used when we were doing the brush lettering, is you just kind of roll the paintbrush in the paint, and it kind of sharpens, it doesn't really sharpen it, but it brings all of the bristles to a point, and that's how you can get finer lines with a thicker brush. Leaves I don't really have a solid technique for. I kind of do one side and then I go and do the other side. I will pull from the tip of the leaf towards the flower, and then from the flower towards the middle of the leaf. That way I can get points on both sides, but I don't do it every time. It just kind of depends. I'm going to sneak these lavender stems through this loop of the flowers word like it's a ribbon. I think that looks nice. Lavender's usually bundled, so I'm going to draw another stem, leaf over there, Okay, and another flower, leaf. Not the sharpest leaf, but that's okay. And then what you should do, once you make sure you have all the leaves you want, I take a contrasting color for the pansies and just do that same cherry blossom technique where you start in the middle and go out. And it gives it that kind of natural, it's like spiky, but it's not a spike. But it's the way the color blends in the pansy flower. And I just add a little bit to some of the centers of the flowers. I don't feel like all of them have to have the center, but I'll do it sometimes, and I'll even do it on ones that aren't pansies. I like all the flowers to look a little bit different. See, I didn't even wash my brush here. I just stuck it right back in the pink. Give it different colors, you know? Alright. Just do a little on that one. And I think I'm gonna call it with there. So I'm gonna go wash my brushes and stuff. Once you do that, let it dry a little bit. You come back with a pen. I'm gonna take my pen and just kind of outline all of my flowers. I think it just gives them a little bit more definition, and makes it a little bit clearer what they are. This is what takes it from like finger painting to, oh, it looks like art now. Ooh. So pansies I always do kind of like a seashell on the top, mostly towards the middle, and then the 3 on the bottom I kind of pull all the way towards the center. And then I'm just kind of emphasizing the spiky part that the brush made naturally with that stroke. So I'm just kind of like outlining that edge. The rounds, I'm just going around and making them round. Makes sense? And these ones, I try and just do kind of like it's like a Bart Simpson haircut on these flower petals. But I try and draw the lines on the petals all the way to the center. And then just the edges on the edge. Alright, another little round one. Alright, big clamshell, and then a little clamshell. And then I try and follow the lines of those 3 segments as I kind of outline the middle color. Okay, and then for the lavender, I kind of just go the opposite way that I did with the paintbrush, and I'm just alternating and circling the individual strokes I made with the brush. And there we go. Oh, I love that. Alright, gonna round that one out. And then the lavender again. Gonna alternate. And then the one on the end, the top one, you just do right down the middle. I'm going to do some leaves here, and I'm also going to do the stem on this one. I got a little bit excited with the brush, I think, so using the pen can make it make a little more sense visually. If you're like, oh no, I drew an extra line, sometimes drawing more lines with the pen will clear it right up. Alright, and again, the Bart Simpson leaf. I did not think of that one till I was just now. That's not how I think about it, but it does kind of look like his little head. But I do like the way these kind of, they're not cherry blossoms, but they kind of look like it. Alright, and then another pansy. And I just like to kind of loosely follow wherever the paint ended up with the pen. I think that makes it just kind of pop. Alright, only a couple more. So if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you. And if you didn't, I understand. You're more than welcome to fast forward around however you like in this video. If you end up making something like this, or this exactly, or you try something else, we would love to see it. Please send pictures to you can send them to the Placentia Library Facebook page. You can tag us on Facebook. I think you can tag us on Instagram. The Hangar uses made at PLD for our hashtag. I would love to see what you make, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be doing more DIY tutorials as virtual programming through the rest of the time that we're going to be closed, and I hope that you are staying well and taking care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.